A nurse whispered her secret feelings to a comatose patient, not knowing he was a billionaire who heard every word and woke up to confess. "Can you hear me?" Emily's voice trembled as she leaned in closer, her breath barely brushing against the man's ear. The sterile scent of antiseptic and quiet hum of machines filled the room, but in that fragile moment, it felt as though time had stilled. "I know I am not supposed to feel this way, but I cannot stop my heart." She pulled back slightly, her eyes scanning the still face of the man lying motionless on the hospital bed. His name, or at least the name assigned to him, was John Doe, a label they used when no identification could be found. But Emily called him something else in her heart. Daniel. It was the name she had given him in her private thoughts, drawn from the inscription on a ring he had been wearing when he was brought in after the accident. Dr. No visitors had come. No one claimed him. His body bore scars and bruises from the car wreck that nearly killed him, but even in his comatose state, there was a quiet strength in the line of his jaw, the high cheekbones, and the faint arch of his brow that gave her a strange sense of familiarity. There was mystery clinging to him like a second skin, and day by day, Emily had found herself drawn deeper into it. She was not the kind of person who believed in fairy tales. Not anymore. Life had been unkind in the most silent, unforgiving ways. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago from ovarian cancer, after a long, painful decline that left Emily not only heartbroken, but emptied. Her father had left when she was 12, and since then it had been just her and her mother. Nursing had become more than a profession. It was her way of protecting others from the kind of suffering she could never stop for the one she loved most. But with this man, something had shifted. She had never spoken this out loud to anyone, not to her colleagues, not to herself in the mirror. But alone in this room, under the fluorescent light and the beeping of the heart monitor, she had started to whisper pieces of herself into his silence. And tonight, it had become too much to hold in. "I see you. You know," she said softly, her hand brushing against his. "Not the wires or the tubes or the machines. I see you. And I do not even know who you are, or if you will ever wake up." His fingers remained limp beneath hers. His chest rose and fell with the steady rhythm of the ventilator. No flicker of the eyes, no twitch, nothing. But inside that broken body, locked in by trauma and silence, Daniel Reed was screaming. He heard everything. He had been hearing for weeks. The world outside was muffled at first, like voices underwater. But Emmeline's voice had been different. Clear, gentle. It was the first voice that had broken through the fog. He did not remember the crash. Not clearly. Bits and pieces flashed in his mind. Headlights, shouting, the jolt of the steering wheel jerking beneath his grip. Then darkness. When he woke up inside himself, he realized he was unable to speak or move. Trapped, but not dead, and very much aware. The voice of the nurse became his tether to the world, to hope. She spoke to him as if he were more than a patient, more than a body on life support. She told him about the patients on the floor, about the elderly woman in room 48 who always demanded chocolate pudding, and about the little boy down the hall who insisted the nurses call him Captain. She talked about books, movies she missed watching, her fear of thunderstorms, and the dreams she kept in a small journal she never showed anyone. And now, tonight, she had told him the one thing he never expected, that she loved him. Daniel wanted to open his eyes, to reach for her hand and squeeze it back, to tell her that her voice had kept him alive, but his body refused. Emily sighed, pulling her hand away slowly. "I should not have said that," she whispered. "It is just... I come in here every day and I feel like you are more present than most people I meet who are wide awake. You listen, and I do not feel so alone when I am with you." A tear slipped from the corner of her eye, but she quickly wiped it away. She leaned forward once more, pressing her forehead gently to his. "Whoever you are, please come back. Please, wake up." Then she stood, straightened her scrub top, and turned toward the door. "Good night, Daniel," she said quietly. "Sleep well." Behind her, the heart monitor continued its steady beat. But inside the still frame of Daniel Reed, a storm had started to stir. He had a name, he had a past, he had secrets that could kill. And he had just found one reason to survive. Her name was Emily. Before the silence, before the machines in the sterile hospital sheets, before the locked-in prison of his own body, there was another life. Daniel Reed had not always been alone. He was born into nothing, a nameless face in the chaos of the foster care system, shuffled from one cold bed to another. But from an early age he learned to observe, to adapt, to survive. He had a mind like quicksilver, sharp, restless, always calculating. He read by flashlight under threadbare blankets and taught himself to code using discarded computers from donation centers. By 24, he had founded his first tech company. By 32, he had become one of the most talked about innovators in Silicon Valley. And by 35, he had turned Reed Innovations into a multi-billion-dollar empire focused on cybersecurity and artificial intelligence for humanitarian use, protecting hospitals, refugee networks, and government systems from malicious attacks. He could have chased only profit, but Daniel believed technology should heal, not harm. That belief made him powerful. It also made him enemies. The one he never saw coming was Victor. Victor Reed, his cousin, was the only family Daniel had left. Raised together in a group home, they had fought bullies side by side, shared food, dreams, even secrets. Daniel brought Victor into his company, gave him a seat at the table, a future he never had to earn. But somewhere along the way, Victor changed. He saw Daniel's idealism as weakness, his compassion as a flaw. And one night, it all unraveled. Daniel was preparing to expose a massive data breach orchestrated by foreign contractors embedded in one of their corporate partners, a breach Victor had secretly sanctioned to sell confidential data for profit. Daniel confronted him in private, hoping blood ties would outweigh ambition. But Victor smiled, cold, calculating. "You built this empire with your genius," Victor had said, "but it's going to be mine." Hours later, Daniel was on the road, headed to meet with a federal investigator. But his brakes failed. The steering jammed. The car veered off a cliffside highway, and everything went black. When he awoke in the hospital, trapped inside himself, he knew Victor had won, for now. Back in the present, Victor Reed appeared on major news outlets, his tone somber, his face a mask of grief. "We lost a visionary," he said into the camera. "My cousin Daniel was not only a brilliant innovator, but a brother to me. We will honor his legacy by continuing the work he loved." No body was recovered from the wreckage. But that suited Victor just fine. He had paid the right people to ensure that no questions were asked, no further investigations conducted. Daniel Reed was officially declared dead, and in a quiet hospital miles away, under an assumed name, he lay comatose, his voice stolen, his identity erased. Except Emily was starting to question everything. One afternoon, while changing the bandages on his arm, she noticed something beneath his skin, a faint outline of ink, barely visible. Carefully, she cleaned away layers of adhesive and saw it clearly, a small, intricate tattoo of a phoenix rising through circuitry, an emblem she remembered from a documentary about Reed Innovations. Her pulse quickened. She leaned in, examining his hand, and that was when she saw the ring. Not just any ring. It was tucked into the lining of the bedsheet, as if someone had tried to hide it during the trauma intake. A platinum band with a unique engraving on the inside. DR, for every fire, a rebirth. She stared at it, heart racing. No one had visited him. No one knew his name. Why would a man like this, who showed no signs of homelessness, no addiction, no history, have such a sophisticated symbolic tattoo? Why did he look so familiar all of a sudden? She picked up her phone, hesitated, then searched. Daniel Reed. The image that appeared on her screen made her drop the phone. It was him. Shorter beard, no bruises, a photo from a tech convention a year ago, but it was him. And if this man was Daniel Reed, he was not only alive, he was in danger, and she was now the only one who knew. Each night, after the last rounds were done and the ward had gone quiet, Emily returned to his room. At first it had been a simple routine: check his vitals, adjust the IV lines, monitor his breathing. But over time, something deeper took root. She began to speak to him, confide in him, share pieces of her heart she had hidden from the world. Sitting beside his bed, she would pull the visitor chair close, rest her arms on the edge of the mattress, and begin. Sometimes she whispered, sometimes she laughed. Sometimes, when she could not hold it in, she cried. "You would have liked her," she said one evening, brushing a damp cloth gently across his forehead. "My mother. She was kind and stubborn and loved wildflowers more than anything else. When she died, I thought I would never feel anything again." Daniel lay still, his face a sculpture of silent pain and memory, but inside, his mind was stirring. The fog that had dulled his senses was beginning to thin. The sound of Emily's voice had become the only thread tethering him to this world, a sound he waited for with every passing second. She told him how she came to work at St. Mark's, how she had traded her dreams of working in international medicine to care for her mother during her final years, how she sometimes wondered if she had made the right choice. But when she met him, this nameless man who said nothing and yet listened with his whole being, something inside her started to heal. "I always wanted to visit the Scottish Highlands," she mused one night, opening a tattered copy of Wuthering Heights. "Not just for the scenery, but for the silence, real silence. Not the kind you find in hospitals or cities, the kind that breathes." She hummed lullabies, sometimes barely above a whisper. She told him about her childhood fears, her awkward teenage years, the boy who broke her heart at 19, the dreams she scribbled in a notebook and never showed anyone. "You are the only one who knows all this," she said softly one night. "Isn't that strange? You cannot even talk to me, and yet I tell you more than I have told anyone in years." In his mind, Daniel was screaming her name. He could feel her presence, like a warm light on his skin. Her voice reached into the darkness and wrapped around his shattered consciousness like a bandage. He remembered the first time she sang to him, a quiet lullaby, her voice unsteady but pure. It cut through the haze like sunlight. That night he dreamed. He had not dreamed since the accident. Each story, each whisper, each quiet laugh, these were the bricks that rebuilt the broken walls inside his mind. And then it happened. One night, after Emily had finished reading a letter she had written to her late mother but never mailed, she leaned forward, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I miss you," she whispered, though she was not sure if she was speaking to her mother or the man in the bed. She rested her head on his arm for a moment, exhausted, and then stood to leave. But as she turned toward the door, she froze. A single tear had escaped the corner of his eye, sliding slowly down his temple. Her breath caught. For a moment she did not move, did not blink. She stared at him, her heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. "Daniel?" she whispered, stepping back to his side. Did you just cry?" She leaned in close, searching his face. "If you can hear me, if you are still in there, please, do it again, anything. Just let me know you are here." But there was no second tear, no twitch of the fingers, no flutter of lashes. Only the steady rhythm of the heart monitor and the soft hum of machines. Still, Emily stood there for several minutes, tears gathering in her own eyes. She reached down and gently wiped the tear from his face, her hand trembling. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew you were still in there." That night, she did not just close the door behind her. She paused at the threshold and looked back, her voice barely audible. "I will wait, as long as it takes." And in the darkness of his unmoving body, Daniel Reed held on to her words like breath. Because now, he had proof. Not only was he hurt, but he had touched her heart, and for the first time since the crash, He believed, truly believed, he would find his way back. Emily arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. The sun had barely risen, casting soft gold across the white walls of the intensive care unit. Something had been gnawing at her since the night before, an unease she could not name. When she entered Daniel's room, her breath caught. There was someone standing at the foot of his bed. A man in a tailored navy mule suit, crisp shirt, and a hospital visitor's badge clipped neatly to his lapel. He was middle-aged, clean-shaven, with eyes that scanned everything and revealed nothing. He turned as she entered. "You must be Nurse Dawson," he said, his smile thin, professional. "I am Raymond Hale, Regional Director for Core Med Healthcare Systems. I am here regarding this patient." Emily hesitated, her instincts on edge. "I was not aware of any corporate visits scheduled for today." "We do not schedule visits for internal audits," he replied smoothly. "This man is under our custodial authority, and we have finally confirmed a transfer facility with a higher neurological care rating. He will be moved this evening." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Moved? Without physician sign-off? His attending has not mentioned anything." "Dr. Hadley has been informed. It is being handled through executive channels," he said, as if that explanation should suffice. "We believe the patient's long-term prognosis will improve with more specialized support." Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Emily felt it in her bones. The way this man's gaze lingered too long on Daniel, how he did not refer to him as a patient but as a possession. She glanced at Daniel's still form. Could he sense this too? Was he screaming inside, like she felt suddenly compelled to do? "I am sorry, Mr. Hale," she said firmly, "but I cannot allow a transfer without full protocol, especially for a patient with no known next of kin." He studied her for a moment, that thin smile never wavering. "You are a very diligent nurse, Ms. Dawson. Admirable. I imagine you are quite protective of your patients." "I do my job," she replied, leveling her gaze with his. "That includes preventing unauthorized removals," the man chuckled, shaking his head. "It is not unauthorized, but I do appreciate your vigilance." He left the room moments later, but not before giving Daniel one last long glance, as if memorizing every line of his face. Emily's nerves remained on edge the rest of the day. She contacted Dr. Hadley, who was away at a conference and unaware of any transfer orders. When she checked with hospital administration, they insisted that a corporate representative from CoreMed had full authorization, but the file had been recently amended with no traceable timestamp. That evening, she stayed by Daniel's side, not leaving even for lunch. Her instinct screamed at her to protect him. What she did not know was that Raymond Hale was a mask. Behind it stood Victor Reed, cleverly disguised, operating under a new identity forged with high-level access and fake credentials. He had tracked Daniel's hospital location through a private investigator, and upon confirming his cousin was alive, moved to eliminate the risk. Emily had gotten in the way. 2 days later, she was called into the hospital administrator's office. "I am sorry, Emily," the administrator said with rehearsed sympathy. "There have been reports of misconduct. Apparently, you have been engaging in excessive personal interaction with a patient in a non-responsive state. Whispering, singing, even physical contact." Emily's face went pale. "Those are fabricated. Who filed them?" "I cannot say," the administrator replied, avoiding her eyes. "But the board is concerned. Until we complete a review, you are officially suspended." As she walked out of the building, her ID badge turned in. Emily felt numb. But somewhere beneath the hurt and betrayal, fire began to burn. Whoever was behind this, whoever had the power to fabricate lies and twist hospital protocol, was after Daniel, and she would not let them take him. The halls of the hospital felt colder than ever. The same floors Emily had walked every day with purpose now echoed with emptiness as she made her final visit. Her badge was gone, her title stripped, her future uncertain. But she had one thing left to do. She stood outside Daniel's room, her hand on the doorframe, trying to steady her breath. The lights were dimmed, the machines beeped in steady rhythm. He lay as he always had, silent, still, impossibly alone. But this time, she was not a nurse on duty. She was just Emily. And this was goodbye. She walked to his side slowly, the lump in her throat growing with every step. Her fingertips brushed his, as they had done 100 times before, but now her touch trembled. "I am so sorry," she whispered, sinking into the chair beside him. "I tried. I really tried." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over before she could stop them. She gripped his hand tighter. "They are going to take you, and I cannot stop them. I do not even know where they are sending you. I do not know if you will be safe." Daniel heard her. Every word was a dagger and a lifeline at once. Inside, he screamed. Not with fear, but with desperation, his mind pushed against the walls of his broken body. Move, speak, do something, anything. Emily leaned closer, resting her forehead against the edge of the bed. "I should not have said I loved you. It crossed a line, but I meant it. God help me, I meant every word." She sobbed, clutching his hand to her chest. "You made me feel something again. You gave me a reason to show up every day, to hope, to believe there could still be good things in this world." Daniel's mind surged. Every muscle in his body screamed to respond, but no signal got through. He was a prisoner in his own skin. "I do not know who you are," she whispered through her tears, "but you mattered to me, and no matter what they say, I will never forget you." She rose slowly, brushing a kiss across his forehead, gentle, trembling. "Goodbye, Daniel." She turned and walked toward the door. She did not look back. If she had, she might have seen the faintest flicker of movement beneath the sheet. Daniel was not ready to let go. Not of her, not of this moment. Alone in the darkness, the silence pressed in. He summoned everything he had, every memory of her laughter, every word she had spoken, every dream she had shared. He focused it into a single command. "Move!" Pain flared through his mind like lightning. His right hand twitched. It was not much. Less than an inch, but it moved. His index finger lifted. The effort nearly made him black out, but the spark had been lit. The wall between mind and body had cracked. He was still here. He could still fight, and now, more than ever, he had something worth coming back for. The moment Daniel's finger moved, everything changed. A nurse, checking vitals on the night shift, caught the twitch on the monitor's subtle neurological response indicator. Within hours, a full neurological exam was underway. The results were cautious but promising. By the end of the week, Daniel had moved all fingers on his right hand and blinked in response to simple commands. It was not a miracle. It was the beginning of a resurrection. Day by day, his mind pushed farther into the light. Muscles long dormant strained to awaken. Electrodes mapped every signal like a road map back to himself. Physical therapists joined the team, and a speech pathologist began working with him to retrain his vocal cords. Weeks passed. His first full word was not yes or hello. It was Emily. The doctors looked at each other, confused. They asked him again, and he repeated it, this time with more force. "Emily." He wrote shakily with a pen strapped to his hand, the letters uneven but legible. "Find Emily Dawson." By then Daniel had access to a tablet. His memory had returned in full, and with it the fury and betrayal of Victor's deception. But Daniel did not act with rage, he acted with precision. He requested his personal belongings from the day of the crash. It took some effort, but eventually the items were recovered, including what looked like a ruined wristwatch. Only it was not just a watch. It was a prototype device designed by Reed Innovations, an advanced voice recorder and data hub embedded into a wearable for internal beta testing. The moment Daniel accessed the cloud backup linked to the watch, he found it. The recording. Their conversation the night of the accident. Victor's voice, clear as day. "You should have walked away, cousin. You and your morality. It is going to bury you." Then the sound of struggle and the eerie silence that followed before the crash. It was all there, every word. Daniel arranged a private meeting with his trusted legal advisor, who had quietly remained loyal even after Victor's takeover. They worked quickly, preparing both the legal assault and a carefully crafted media plan. Within 48 hours, Daniel Reed was ready to rise. The press conference was held at the main auditorium of Reed Innovations headquarters. Reporters buzzed with shock, disbelief, and anticipation. The man they believed dead walked onto the stage, thinner, paler, but unbroken. Flashes lit up the room. Daniel stood tall behind the podium. "I was declared dead," he began, his voice still rasping but steady. "But death never took me. Betrayal did. Greed did. And the man behind it wore my bloodline." Gasps filled the hall. He paused, then looked directly into the cameras. "But it was not revenge that kept me alive. It was not the hunger to take back my company. It was the voice of one person, a nurse who sat by my bed every night and spoke to me like I was still human. She loved me when I was nothing but a ghost." Daniel leaned in slightly. "Her name is Emily Dawson, and if she is watching, I want her to know I heard every word." Across town, in a modest apartment, Emily sat frozen on her couch. Her coffee had gone cold in her hands. On the screen before her, the man she thought she had lost forever was speaking. Daniel. Alive. Her breath caught as she listened to him describe the accident, the conspiracy, the recording. But when he said her name, her full name, before the entire world, she burst into tears. He had heard her. Every word, every confession, every quiet moment when she thought she was alone. Back at the press conference, Daniel finished with the blow that would end Victor's reign. He played the audio. The room exploded with noise, shouting journalists, ringing phones, frantic whispers. Victor, watching from his estate, stood paralyzed as the full weight of his actions unfurled in front of the world. Legal teams were already mobilizing, investigations reopened, shareholders called emergency meetings. The empire Victor stole was crumbling by the second. But Daniel cared only about one thing. He handed his prepared statement to his assistant and leaned into the microphone once more. "I have walked through the fire," he said softly, "but love pulled me back. I have something more important to reclaim than my company." And with that, he stepped down from the stage, leaving behind a world reeling from revelation. All that mattered now was finding her. Daniel moved with quiet determination. Though still recovering physically, his mind was sharper than ever. The trauma had stripped away distractions, leaving only focus and purpose. With the help of his legal team and a small group of trusted allies, he launched a comprehensive investigation into Victor's activities during his months of death. The data trail was clear and damning. Victor had falsified documents to assume emergency control over Reed Innovations. He had sold off core humanitarian projects, funneled money through shell companies, and authorized illegal surveillance on multiple former executives. But the most damning evidence came from Victor's own arrogance. The recording from the prototype watch, which Daniel had revealed during his public return, sparked a firestorm. Authorities now had reason to dig deeper. Search warrants were issued, email servers were raided, and within days a pattern of fraud, manipulation, and attempted murder emerged. Victor tried to run. He vanished from his penthouse, disappeared from the city, but not for long. They found him in a rented villa in Baja California, hiding behind layers of false identities and a dwindling army of lawyers. He was extradited to the United States within 72 hours. The media erupted. The tech world was shaken. But for Daniel, it was not about headlines. It was about closure. He requested one final meeting, face to face. They allowed it, in a private holding cell under tight security. When Daniel entered the room, Victor looked up, a faint, bitter smile on his lips. "Well? Well," he said, reclining in the chair as if it were a throne. "The ghost walks." Daniel said nothing at first. He studied the man across from him, the cousin who had once been his brother, his partner, his closest kin, and now his betrayer. "You tried to kill me," Daniel said quietly. Victor shrugged. I tried to keep the company alive. You were willing to sink it for some idealistic nonsense. You sold people's lives to fund your ambition. You were wasting power, Victor snapped, his mask slipping. We were kings. You wanted to be a priest. Daniel leaned forward. I trusted you. You were my family. Victor's smirk returned. And look how far that got you. There was a long silence between them. Then Victor added, But you did win, cousin. The world adores you. You reclaimed your throne. The media worships you. And the girl. His voice softened into mockery. That sweet little nurse. The one who talked to your unconscious body like a child with a doll. I watched every video, you know. Every news clip. She cried for you. You should feel lucky. Daniel's eyes darkened, but he stayed calm. She saved me, he said. Her love was real. Something you will never understand. Victor's smile faded slightly. Maybe not, he said, leaning back. But let us be honest. You may have everything now. Power, fame, redemption. But you do not have her. You do not have her heart. For a moment the words landed hard, but Daniel did not flinch. Instead, he stood. You are wrong, he said quietly. Because I never wanted to own her heart. I only wanted to be worthy of it. Victor scoffed. So what now? You want vengeance? A final blow? Gloat before the fall? Daniel shook his head. No, he said softly. I came to tell you something else. Victor raised an eyebrow. I forgive you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victor blinked. You? What? I forgive you, Daniel repeated. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your poison any longer. For the first time, Victor's composure cracked. His smirk vanished. His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked around the cell as if realizing, for the first time, where he truly was. You will rot for what you did, Daniel continued. But I will not let hatred define the rest of my life. Victor stared at him, hollow-eyed. You always thought forgiveness was weakness, Daniel said, but it is the strongest thing a person can choose. And with that, Daniel turned and walked out. Behind him, Victor remained seated, alone, silenced, and for the first time in his life, defeated, not by power, but by grace. Daniel did not look back. He had one more thing left to reclaim. Not a company, not a legacy, but love. The road into the countryside curved through sunflower fields and quiet groves of oak trees. Daniel had not seen such peace in years. After the chaos, the courtrooms, and the endless press, he had vanished, not to hide, but to find something. And now he had. The clinic was small, built of red brick at the edge of a sleepy town. Its hand-painted sign read, Willow Creek Community Health. No cameras, no boardrooms, just a waiting room, a few nurses, and kindness in the air. Daniel stepped inside. At the front desk, dressed in soft blue scrubs with her hair in a braid, stood Emily Dawson. She was flipping through patient files, unaware that the man she thought she lost was just a few steps away. He watched her for a moment longer, then said softly, I heard you. Emily froze. She looked up, stunned. Their eyes met. Her lips parted, but no words came. I heard every word, Daniel said, moving closer. Your stories, your songs, your tears. I was there. I just could not answer. Tears welled in her eyes, and as he reached for her, she ran, straight into his arms. I thought you were gone, she sobbed. You brought me back, he whispered, holding her tightly. You saved me. They sat under the oak tree behind the clinic that afternoon. Emily asked him what came next. No more boardrooms, Daniel said. I want to build something real, something that heals. He told her his plan, a community wellness center, named after her mother, the Helen Dawson Healing Center, a place for care, not profit. Emily cried again, this time with joy. The center opened the following spring on a sunlit patch of land outside town. It offered care, counseling, and connection. Daniel worked there beside Emily, no longer a headline, but a healer. That summer, under a soft lavender sky, they were married in a field of wildflowers. No grand venue, no cameras. Just loved ones, neighbors, and patients seated on wooden benches. Many had once shared their pain with Daniel and Emily. Now they shared their joy. Emily wore a simple ivory dress, her hair woven with daisies. Daniel wore a charcoal suit and a wedding band etched with the word "always." When the officiant invited them to speak, Daniel took her hands. "You whispered to me in the dark," he said. "When the world thought I was gone, you stayed. You gave me something stronger than medicine. You gave me love." Tears slid down her cheeks. "You gave me a reason to return," he continued. "I vow to always listen, the way you did when no one else believed I was still here." Emily's voice trembled as she replied, "I talked to you like you were alive," she said. "Because you were. In my heart, you never left, and I vowed to never forget the man I knew, even when the world tried to." They kissed, and the field filled with soft applause. Later that evening, beneath stars and flickering fireflies, Daniel raised a glass. "I used to think survival was the miracle," he said, "that waking up was the victory." He looked at Emily. "But I was wrong. It was not life that saved me." He smiled. "It was love." The meadow fell still, and then applause rippled once more. And in that quiet night, wrapped in the arms of the woman who had never stopped believing in him, Daniel Reed was no longer the man the world had once lost. He was the man who had been brought back by love. And so, what began with silence, pain, and a whisper in the dark ended with love, healing, and a new beginning. Daniel and Emily's story reminds us that sometimes the deepest miracles do not come from science or fate, but from the quiet, unwavering presence of someone who refuses to give up on you. If this story touched your heart, made you tear up, or reminded you of the power of love and second chances, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where we bring you real-life inspired tales that heal, inspire, and stay with you long after the screen fades. Until next time, may your heart stay open and your soul stirred.